Good evening, Palace fans around the world. Welcome to the Red and Blue Review. My name is Gel Holyoke, and tonight we will discuss a two-game, 2-point frustrating week from games against Norwich and Brentford. I'm joined tonight by an aged panel. My only hope is that they can remember the games and that they've already been to the toilets. Welcome, gentlemen. Ian, how are you?
Good evening, Gel. What a good evening, everyone. What a fabulous introduction. Brilliant.
Thanks, mate. Tim, not a legend. How you doing?
Good, thank you, sir. That's probably the nicest thing you've ever said about me, so I'll take that. Yeah.
Good. And Jim Cannon, who is a legend. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Behind the scenes, pushing buttons, putting pictures and texts up is Nigel Croucher. Thank you, Nigel. So on Wednesday just gone, we visited Carrow Road to play a resurgent Norwich team that buoyed by some pretty good results for them, really. 2 words summed up this game: awful and brilliant. Tim, I know you've got some stats. Just a brief synopsis of the game, please, mate. Fire away.
Yeah, so as we all know, it was 1-1 was the final score. The kind of starting 11 for us with Goitia in goal, Ward, Mark, Guehi, however you pronounce it, Anderson, Mitchell, Hughes, Gallagher, Schlupp, Zaha, Mateta, Elise. And obviously there were subs during the game. We had Eze come on for Schlupp, and we have Eduardo for Mateta and Ayew for Elise. The game started. I put the game on, went to make a cup of tea, came back, and we were 1-0 down already. So Norwich striker Timu Puki scored after just 38 seconds, which I think I saw something as the fastest goal of the season. Had a low strike in off the post after being teed up by Adrian Ida. The Finn then failed to make the most of 2 other opportunities, and I think something's got to be said for the youngster at the back. I thought he did a brilliant job. We could have been 3-0 at half time. We did 2 other opportunities while at the other end, and Mateta sent Palace's best chance of the first half straight at Angus Gunn. Palace equalised on the hour mark. I'm sure Giles can talk about Zaha's goal, cutting from the left. Brilliant angle shot. I mean, that about says it all, into the far corner. Just a few minutes after that, we were ordered a penalty. And again, I don't think too much needs to be said about that, apart from it was nothing to do with the penalty spot. It was purely Wilf's rather odd angle of attack. And I think, as Jill said before the show started, even if he had have connected with it, it would have gone way over the bar, or the keeper would have saved it. Penalty, again, Tyrick Mitchell putting Zaha in to get the penalty spot. We continued to chase a winner, but the Norwich goalkeeper had a brilliant game, denied Connor twice. So that's about it, really. So statistics-wise, looking at it, possession kind of says it all. Norwich 28%, Palace 72%. Norwich had 5 shots, we had 13 shots on target. Norwich won. We had 5 corners, 4-6 to us. Fouls, Norwich 11 and Palace 15.
Yeah, I mean, so when it comes to stats, you know, I love a stat. It really does sound like we thrashed them 1-1. But really, like you said, we could have been 3-0 down at half time. Had it not been for Tyrick making invaluable interceptions, we probably would have been out and 3-0 down. We're out of the game. Doesn't matter who you're playing in the Premier League. Well, unless it's Liverpool 6 or 7 years ago. Jim, how good is Tyrick Mitchell now? I mean, he's almost a fledgling when it comes to Premier League appearances. But I mean, how good is this kid?
Well, if you've watched him from the start of the season, he's probably a totally different player now. He's one of these lads that just seems to get better as the season goes on. I mean, he started. I mean, he's never done anything wrong, but sometimes he probably wants to overplay, which is not a bad thing. I like that in a full back that wants to get forward and attack. But over the last few games, he's just been outstanding. And you've already mentioned it. You know, there was 2 occasions there. If that was, who was the left back there? If that was Van Arnold, that would have been 2 goals in the back of the net there because he just didn't defend. But Tyra has got a great thing about him that he actually looks as if he wants to defend, and plus he's so good going forward. He's becoming a real threat, and he's probably one of our best players at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, coming to you in a minute just for a bit of chat and an introduction from the chat. Seems to be a few people down there. Yeah, I agree, Jim. He seems to be getting better and better. And like you say, you know, Patrick wouldn't have he wouldn't have been in a penalty area, would he? Just been having a little jog back to defend. But yeah, I mean, it's great as well. Just to see his progress. And I think he's almost cementing himself, you know, as well. He is cementing himself as the number 1 left back in the club for me. Ian, Tom Clark Samuel said, "Evening, ultras." Who else we got in there, mate?
I'm not getting you, Jill. There, I didn't pick up what you said, but if you can hear me, I'll just carry on. Picking up on Tyrick Mitchell still. If you haven't seen it yet, go and have a look at a video that Wilf did, an interview that Wilf did recently in the last week since the Norwich game. They interviewed Wilf about Tyrick Mitchell, about playing with him down the left-hand side. And Wilf says that he doesn't talk to him about his defending at all. He doesn't need to because he's such a great defender. I think when he first started, that's what he came in for. Obviously, defending was very dependable as almost like a traditional left back. But Will says, I just talked to him about going forward and and overlapping and linking up with me. And I think if he keeps playing with someone as good as Wilf, then he can only get better in all aspects of his game. And I think what we haven't seen of him quite enough yet is the thing we see in some other fullbacks in getting the balls across into the box that result in assists for goals. But I think it will come for sure with Tyrick Mitchell. And there's a lot of love for Tyrick Mitchell in the chat. So people are saying Tyrick is the dogs. I think we know what you mean by that. I've just seen a comment that says Tyrick Mitchell better than Wan-Bissaka. So yeah, again, debatable, but I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that at all. Lots of love for Tyrick Mitchell for sure.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I'm sure most people can. It might just been a little bit, but in the chat, I know there's Ryan, Tom, Brad, Mark, Steve, Chloe, Andy, Charlie, Dawn, John Knox, Gareth, Damien, Paul, David, Aaron. He said, "Evening, boys." I'd have said gentlemen, but I said, "Yeah, he's on." Thanks, mate. I tried to get you on this week. I'm glad I never. Paul Bristow, Mark Callaghan, Jim Lawson, Matty Cannon. Yeah. So again, like you say, a lot of love for Tyrick. Jim, I just want to talk about Wilf's penalty. I mean, it was, bizarrely. I saw on Twitter someone said that just summed up Wilf Zaha's career in 3 minutes, from from the sublime to almost a catastrophe. I mean, we were talking about this before. I mean, there's no rocket science to taking penalties, is there?
Well, I'm not one to talk because my record when I took a couple of penalties was one goal and one terrible miss. So, it just seemed that the way he ran up to the ball, and he was almost leaning. I mean, normally you run up and you plant your left foot or your non-kicking foot on the floor and you follow through, so you're over the top of the ball. But when I watched it back in slow motion, he was almost laying back as he put his foot down. And I think that's probably the reason why his foot just went straight on, and he I don't know, he didn't actually sort of like adjust his body quickly to get a decent shot, and it was. I mean, you got to give him the benefit of the doubt. He slipped, but it just seemed like it was a bad slip. Let me say that.
Yeah, Tim. I know you've already said it in your in your little synopsis of the game, but go on, tell us what you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, the penalty, I think, is just one of those things. It wasn't the pitch. It was just a bad penalty, end of story. But I just wanted to bring up two questions from the chat, which I think are pretty good questions and should be addressed. The first one, considering the season we've had, the number of draws, how few victories we've had, and Mark Corbett asked the question, serious question, do you think we overrate our players? And Martin Bashford also, I think it's a good question. Wardy is taking a lot of stick. What do we think? I think they're two pretty good questions because I think, first of all, sorry.
Okay, well, the Joel Ward thing, I get really peeved with people that have a go at him. I mean, firstly, he's the best right back at the club at the moment. And again, from what we read on social media, Ferguson's injured again. So, but listen, he's 30, and the Premier League seems to pride itself on having absolutely rocket fast wingers, or really, really fast fullbacks. So he's always going to be up against someone who's rapid. I mean, look at Will 3 or 4 years ago. I remember seeing him at Chelsea 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, turning Aspilicueta, like you give him whiplash, he turned him around so many times. I mean, it's what happens. It's not, very, very rarely does Joel make mistakes. It's rarely that he costs us goals. If he costs us goals week in, week out, it'd be completely different.
And I agree with you. And I think you could tell that in the Norwich game, the first half, their winger had the better of Joe Ward. No one could say he didn't. But the quality of Ward was second half. He turned round and basically the guy didn't have a look in second half because Ward made adjustments. And you only get that through experience and being a good player.
Yeah,
absolutely. Ian,
take your mind back to the Brighton game. How did we score that wonderful team goal? Who was the instrumental player in that move? It was Joel Ward. 4 completed passes and assisted the assister. He's not going to play, 100% every week necessarily. Nobody is, but he's solid, dependable. You can't knock Joel Ward, absolutely not. And I thought he played all right yesterday. First half he came unstuck in that the opening goal was arguably down to him. He was left for dead, but he's in the opening seconds of the game. Just coming back to that, I've forgotten about this. Somebody said that when Norwich kicked off, there were 2 or 3 players in our half. So technically, ref should have said, restart. I think it probably happens all the time in the Premier League. But there we go. That's that picture. Look at that. This is the kickoff of that game. 2 Norwich players, 3 if you count the one nearest the camera, in our half of the pitch. And the referee allows it to start. And 38 seconds later, they're 1-0 up. And Tim's still making his cup of tea. Can I make a comment about the penalty as well? That hasn't been said so far.
Yeah,
the penalty, it took an absolute age for it to be taken. And Norwich players were encroaching the area and they knew what they were doing. They were delaying it. They were delaying it and delaying it, thinking the longer we delay this, the more we're putting the penalty taker off. And I'm not saying if they hadn't done that, he would have scored, but I think that's a bit of gamesmanship. And also, someone said to me, I didn't notice this myself, but someone said they were messing around the groundsman at half-time around that penalty spot more than any other area of the pitch, which is bizarre. And I don't suppose you even think of that or think to mention it unless there was a situation that occurred like it did in the 64th minute, where Wilf had the miss of the century. There we go. Freudian slip there.
Perfect. Well, the other thing that you turn around and said to Tim about the players. I mean, the emphasis on Patrick's game seems to be pass and pass and pass, and the emphasis for the last sort of 5 or 6 years has been try and pass and then attack quickly. That seems to have sort of gone out of our game the last month or so. You know, the actual pace of the game. Jim, I know you said before that we overplay. I saw 5 passes between Gay and Anderson against Norwich, and it was infuriating. Are we too slow going forward at the moment?
Well, if you look at the last few games, we seem to have slowed down in the way we play. We were on the front foot sort of early on in the season. We were defending high up the park. Now it seems to be, whether it's a case of these players thinking, well, maybe we got to defend a bit more. I'm sure the emphasis over the last half a dozen games has been more defensive, in the sense that we were quite an easy touch in sort of defending situations. So maybe Patrick is looking at it slightly different, that if you're going to win a game, you don't give anything away. But no, I mean, I don't think we overplay. And that comment there from Tim regarding do we think we're as good as what we are? We've got a really good side there, probably one of the best sides we've had for quite a long time. I think Maka was a big problem, missing him, because he seems to make a lot of things happen in the middle of the park that I think we missed. Schluppy does a good job, but I don't think he's anywhere near as good as MacArthur playing in that particular role. So, yeah, we tend to overplay a little bit more, but then I just saw the comment that we were kicking, Anderson was kicking long balls all through the match against Brentford. Is that right?
Yeah, he was taking the goal kicks. And
yeah,
apparently the reason was he could get more distance than Guita, which I found strange, to be honest with you.
Did they not try and play out of the back then? Or
less so.
I heard it.
Less so.
Less so. So maybe he's just trying to get things forward a little bit quicker. But I mean, the bottom line is we've lost 8 games this season. West Ham are 4th in the league, and they've lost 8 games. So we're not doing bad. Our big problem is, like it's always been, is putting the ball in the back of the net. Every game we create quite a lot of chances. The bottom line is we haven't got an Andy Johnson that seems to nip in, or Clinton McKenzie that would score goals, sort of like just being in the right place at the right time, or Murray. Like, we haven't got that sort of player. So it is difficult. And I'm hoping that people like Mateta and Edouard start sort of showing what they can really do in front of goal. But at the moment, that's our problem.
Tim, I'm coming to you in a second. See, what I found was Mateta.
Morrison, not Clinton McKenzie.
Yeah, Clinton Morrison, yeah.
I'm getting Liam McKenzie.
I didn't want
Clinton Morrison. He'll kill me when he hears me.
Clinton McKenzie. Clinton McKenzie my brother used to, he used to train. They used to train. The McKenzie brothers used to train down at a pub, the Prince of Wales, I think it was, down in Fulton Heath, was a boxing pub. I saw Leon,
like last week. He does a bit of the corporate stuff with us. So, yes, got that wrong. Before anybody shoved in and said, who are you talking about?
It just proves that this is a live show, guys. All right, mistakes happen on live shows. You know.
I think is it 40 draws we're up to this year? And you have to think that, I know people are turning around and saying, oh, we were where we were with Roy, this year and last year, and it was boring. But like I said, I'd rather be where we are now. But my main thing was just, and again, we'll do a game soon, Ian, and you'll see, what I mean. Was Mateta was making some absolutely fantastic runs on against Norwich, and he wasn't seen. He wasn't seen once. He probably made 7 or 8 runs in the first half and wasn't seen once. And for me, no matter how good we think Gallagher is, and our midfielders, someone should be spotting those, because they should be the ballers in the side. They should be the ones supporting the front, and not just. But again, with Michael Elise out right, the ball was played behind him, so he's having to stop his run, get it onto his left foot, and he's closed down by 2 players because people know he's decent now, to stop him coming onto his left foot, and then the play breaks down, and it goes back to the right back, centre back, left back, right back. It just drives me mad. We need to be getting forward, faster. And also at times Mateta was playing up on his own, and we all know that doesn't really work, because we've sort of been Benteke for playing up on his own for the last 3 or 4 years. But unless there's anything else that you guys want to add about the Norwich game, say your piece, because if not, we're going to move on to yesterday's game. Tim.
Yeah, I'm glad Jim's on, because there's one thing that's sort of been niggling the back of my mind for quite a few games now. You see all the negativity on social media from Palace fans about how bad, all the draws, we're not winning enough. I think people forget the amount of changes there have been in the squad and the back room, and in such a short space of time, the turnaround, and there's still the level of football we're seeing. But the one thing that does concern me is the number of games this season where we've started off really slowly, really poorly, and it's not been till the second half where we started playing. And then after the game, you see the manager's interview, and Vieira recognises that. He said, we need to start quicker, but we're not doing it. And it's been a lot of games now. So it's like, Jim is an ex-player. At what point do you put that down to the players having to take responsibility, and they're the ones that need to sort it? Or is Vieira not communicating correctly? Or what is he not doing to get the message across? These supposed professional players don't pick up and actually start the games the way they're supposed to be.
Well, I'll disagree with you in the sense that we haven't started. I thought, especially the early part of the season, that was the total difference. When we watched last year, it went until the second half before we even started playing on loads of games against teams that we knew were inferior to us. Total opposite this year. I thought we started lots of games, we started on the front foot, we got at, especially at home. It's different away from home. Different where you've got a more defensive mind, and you're thinking totally different from a home game when you've got all the fans on your back and you're pushing and trying to get forward. We're a new team. If you go through, apart from 2 or 3 players, everybody's different in this team. You've got a new manager, and it's not going to happen overnight. And I'm quite surprised how well we've done this season, considering all the changes that we've had from the backroom staff and from all the players. So I would disagree a little. And it's not a case of players can't pick it up. We used to always say it's not tap water. You can't turn it on and turn it off when you want. If you don't start right, you will not. It'll be harder then to progress and get into the game. So I think it's just circumstance at the minute. The last few games we've not started quite well, but I wouldn't agree with you the earlier part of the season. Certainly before Christmas, I thought especially at home, we were on the front foot and going at teams.
And you've got to remember as well, the other team are set up just as buoyed up as we are. You want Crystal Palace to start on the front foot and start really brightly. And we have done a few times, Jim, haven't we? You know, I'm just thinking of the Southampton game where we went in front and then we were behind quickly, obviously. But it's the opposition are there. They're really hungry. When we played Norwich the other night, we were playing Norwich, a team that are in desperate need for points. Backs against the wall. They're on a good little run of form. And they really started bright. You could tell with their home crowd. And Jim, when you play the game, you alluded to it there. It does make a difference, doesn't it? When you look around your surroundings, what you're familiar with, the majority of the crowd are supporting the other side. Does that make a difference to you as a professional footballer?
Yeah, of course it does. I mean, like if you ask any Palace player if they had a chance, apart from playing at Wembley, they want to play at home. Yeah. You always think you get a better chance of winning the game. And like you're talking about Norwich there, Norwich have had a nice little run. Them players were dead and buried before the new manager, Smith, came in. And he's galvanised them a little bit. So that was always going to be, and they've had 2 or 3 really good results. So that game, again, it's a shame because we seem to get these teams like new manager at Newcastle, we always come up against a team that's just got a new manager. But they were on the front foot. They started really well, but then we gradually started wearing them down, getting into the game, and at the end of the day, we should have won the game. But yeah, it does make a difference. Like a home crowd, especially our crowd. I mean, they're just probably one of the best crowds in the country.
Yeah, absolutely, Jim.
Yeah, I agree. Just the only thing I will say is that we. A lot of people complain about us not getting the results against the teams around the bottom. You have to remember where we've been for the last 8 years. We've really struggled. We've finished mid-table a few times, but it's only a little run that gets us out of the mire. And every game's a cup final. And so where Norwich are now, we've been many seasons fighting for survival. Where Burnley are just fight for survival. Apart from one season, they will always fight for survival. But Brentford, every game is a cup final, and they see us. No matter what way people look at it, they see us as a team that they can take points off, which has been proven. With good luck, bad luck, or just indifference in play. It is frustrating, but you have to remember that we have worn those shoes many times. So if you get into the psyche of the other teams, you'll you get a more of an understanding and why it's harder to play these teams at the bottom, because they're battling literally for some of them for their careers and for their wages, because if they go down, they're losing 35, 40, 50% of their wages, that is built into their contracts. But anyway, great discussion about that. So let's move on. Yesterday, Palace visited the new home of Brentford FC, a purpose-built stadium they share with London Irish Rugby Football Club. The entire stadium was built for £71 million. It's around half of what I understand our proposed main stand will cost if it ever happens. A few changes to the team were greeted by dismay by some, including myself. Ian, I know that you've got the stats and a brief synopsis of this game. Carry on, mate.
Thank you. Yeah, first time visit to the Brentford Community Stadium. Nice and convenient for the station, the Kew Bridge station. A really nice pub, nice mix of home and away fans by the bridge there before the game. Great atmosphere. A lot of our fans were on the boat down the Thames yesterday. I wasn't one of them. Nick was on the boat, and the boat arrived early. So when the boat came in, they all came in the pub and created a right row. But we got in the stadium. I thought it was a strange one when I went in. I'm not sure what I was expecting. I was expecting a new stadium, but it just felt like a big Meccano kit. To me, it was bizarre. Didn't help that for the whole of the first half, the sun was in our eyes, so I'm watching the game like this the whole time. But we started brightly enough. In terms of the stats, we had 58%. Compare that to 72 we had at Norwich. So we still had the majority of the possession away from home, as you'd probably expect against a side like Brentford. Shots on target, they had more than we did, but we had shots they had more than we did. We had 3 on target, they only had 2. Corners, we had 9 corners. We had 9 corners yesterday. We've got to make more of our corners. Maybe we can come back to that point and talk about that after I've done this bit. But 9 corners. And obviously a goalless draw, not an awful lot to talk about. As I said, we started brightly enough. Brentford enjoyed a spell on top. Rico Henry fired a shot wide. Guaita blocked a shot from Mambubo, who looked about their best player. I thought he looked a really good player. And our best chance of the game came when I think it was Edouard put the ball through to Jordan Ayew on the right, and it looked easier for him to score than miss. But of course we all know what happened. When I watch it back on the video, it doesn't look quite as easy. To be fair, he's got his angles all wrong. I think they actually said that in the match of the day commentary, and the chance we're begging. So second half started in the same way. First half finished really. We were just about on top, I thought. Struggled to break Brentford down. And it was lovely to see James McArthur come on for the first time since November. And he got a brilliant ovation from the away support. Unfortunately, Will Hughes is injured. That's why he was replaced. But McArthur did force the Brentford keeper into a relatively confident diving save. I want to talk about the penalty appeal, well, the 2 penalty appeals. They had one in the first half. It was a throw-in, and Mark Gay's got up with his arm in the air, and it does touch the ball. And then just as you fear, they're all appealing for a penalty, just as you fear that he's going to give it, he blows it the other way and gives us a free kick for a shove in the back. A little bit soft, and we were a little bit fortunate. And you saw Gallagher having a word with him, and you can only assume he said something like, "For goodness' sake, don't jump in the box with your arm in the air like that," because obviously you can give a boy a penalty away easily. We've seen them given for sure. So we got away with one, I think, there. But I think the one in the 91st minute, I cannot believe how this is not given. I don't know if we've got a clip of this, Nigel, have we? But he's all over him. He's got both hands on him. He's wrestled Wilf to the ground. And frankly, even where I was in the away end, which was miles away from it, I was screaming it was a penalty and just not given. And I think it was one of those, I think Gary Lineker might have said on Match of the Day that if the ref gives it, VAR doesn't overturn it. But if he doesn't give it, they don't step in and say, it's clear and obvious you've missed it. And I think we were just unfortunate. Maybe it was a blessing, because if we'd been given a penalty, does Wilf step up again? Oh, he probably does, actually, knowing him. But I think we were just a bit unfortunate not to get that. And then that wasn't the last chance. So in the 95th minute, Anderson was forward for a free kick, and it fell to him. And he had a go at goal, and it was the save by Raya, the goalkeeper. It was a nice height for him, to be fair. If he hits it in the corner, it's in for sure. So it ends goalless, frustrating. And I don't know, when you're watching Palace live, I don't know if you're anything like me. Sometimes I turn to my mates and say, look, 5 minutes to go, look, I'll take the draw now. I think I just don't want to lose it. The feeling of losing is horrible, especially towards the end. And we've been there, haven't we? We've suffered like that before now. It's a horrible feeling. So, for me, when the full-time whistle went, it was a little bit of relief, thinking at least we haven't lost this game. Not an easy place to go to, albeit the fact they've lost 5 on the spin. So, you could argue that we should be winning. But I didn't think we did enough to win the game yesterday. Definitely a pen, other people are saying in the chat. So I think we're all agreed. We've all got our red and blue specs on that we think that it should have been a penalty. My friend Real Panel says, I judge all penalties now, or if it was Liverpool, Van Dijk would have got the foul that Gui did, so no pen. And if Wilf's foul was on Jota or Salah, it would have been given. Yeah, for sure. Can't disagree with that, mate. There we are. That's my summary of the Brentford game. If you were there, tell us what you think.
Yeah, I don't think there's much more that I can add to that. A lot of love for my cat Jinx in the chat. Thanks for that. I just thought we just not all of us kick our pets. Although it drives me out the wall sometimes. But yeah, Tim, I'll come to you in a minute for some more stuff through the chat. If you can have a quick flick through. I'm seeing Martin Bashford saying we will beat Chelsea. I know Conor Gallagher isn't playing because obviously that's his that's his real team. They're the ones that I think pay his wages. But anyway, so maybe that little injury to Hughes getting Macca on. We'll see Macca just getting that a little bit of game time, fresh game time, and also Kouate's back as well. Hopefully, he won't be too drained after everything that's gone out in Africa for him and his pals. But yeah, I mean, the next few games are going to be challenging, to say the least. Tim, we got anything from the chat?
It's the usual RU stuff. I can't think of many other players that cause so much chat amongst fans. Mark Corbett, just don't understand why Jordan gets the start. What does PV see in him? Rob Cranfield, things certain in life, death, taxes, and IU missing a sitter. I don't quite know if it's a sitter, to be fair. I think it was slightly harder, but there was no confidence when I saw it in the highlights and I saw him run. I knew it was a 0-0 final score, so I knew he didn't score, but there was no chance of him scoring that. Some discussion on the penalty as well. Paul Bristow, Simon Hooper is to us what Kevin Friend is to Liverpool. He's the same one that didn't send Anderson off at Burnley. So it swings and roundabouts, isn't it? I to be fair, when I saw it in the highlights, I thought Wilf went down pretty easy, to be fair. But then having said that, I can't remember which game it was, but it was a recent game. We had a penalty against us. I think it was Hughes had his arm kind of slightly around the neck of the player, and VAR stepped in and gave that as a penalty. So didn't do it for that one. So yeah, that's about it really, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of people, including my mate out there in Spain, Paul Glance, saying respect the point. Respected 14 points this season, which are a bit too many for me, Paul. But I get where you're coming from. There's been a lot of stuff in social media about Wilf. Now, the thing with Wilf with me is you get the brilliance and the petulance, and he has started to, over this, especially this season, go into players after they've kicked him, almost saying, "Why are you kicking me? Why are you grabbing me? Why are you doing?" It's like, and what happens is the referees. He then gets involved in a conversation with the referee. Then he says, obviously, are you blind? You can't see his kick. I'm not sure whether he's a victim of his own circumstance, of his own whining and petulance, and thankfully he's kept his hands down in the last few weeks. But it is very, very frustrating, Ian.
Yeah, do we think that referees treat Wilf differently? Because he moans, because he's been known to go, or reputation that he goes down easily in the box. But I can't see yesterday as one of those occasions where he went down easily. He was trying to stay on his feet, and the defender had both arms around him. You could see it clearly. Jim, I don't know when in your day was there any player like that, like Wilf, that was targeted? I'm thinking maybe someone like Vince Hilaire was he like that? I don't know.
Well, it's like any player. If you're a good player, you're targeted, aren't you? Like people just want to kick Wilf because they feel that's probably the best way to stop him. But I think, and there was a comment made on Match of the Day that maybe his reputation, like you're talking about, has preceded that decision. He seems to argue and fight, and he's been doing that now for a couple of seasons. But this season, he's been like hands on the hips and moaning and groaning. And I think sometimes referees just think, it's only Wilf. He's just doing what Wilf does. But that particular decision, if it was outside the box, it's a free kick.
Yeah.
Because it's in the box, then they just think different. And but the way I look at it is the handball was a penalty. I mean, there was no real push there. If his hand was just above his shoulder, but it was about 5 foot above his head. I don't know what. He's done that before.
Yes.
Early on in the season, he threw his hand up. So
It's late.
Some players tend to do that sometimes, and I thought we were lucky there. So, in my view, it evened itself out there. We should have got a penalty, but they could quite easily have got a penalty as well.
Yeah, no, I agree there. Jason Green has come to you in a second, Tim. Jason Green said it's 2 away draws. It's like there's a crisis. Let's be positive. There are no certainties in the Premier League. Every game is tough generally, in my honest opinion. And that is, you're absolutely right. And it's what I said, especially the teams down the bottom that are fighting for their, for their Premier League survival. They are going to be rougher and tougher. They're not ballers. They're not a Man City. With Man City will only kick you when they need to. Man City will only, you will only get done by a Man City player if you're through. If you're through and away, they will literally take the yellow cards. Getting back to the Will thing very quickly, to you, Tim. There was I refer to it all the time because I like it when players speak the truth. But Troy Deeney put his hands up to Watford kicking Wilf into Capoue. I mean, look at Capoue. I mean, how he was never sent off and literally kicks out of football. He could have ruined Wilf's career with that when he jumped on his Achilles. But Watford used to take it in turn. Just kick him. We don't really care. And just one more thing. Again, Nick Philpott said this in the chat earlier on. And Luke Cooper's come up and said, could we get sucked into a relegation fight? Now, this thing about us being, where we are, and I don't think we will, but then there are no certainties. So again, with Newcastle winning, and I think we do need to get those 3 wins sharpish to get us away from that bottom 3. But again, we've got a chance in a couple of games coming up. Tim, come to your second.
Yeah, it's something that Jim said earlier on, and I've heard it, we've all heard it before. The whole thing about, if that's outside of the box is given. Doesn't that show a fundamental failure in the way referees are trained or referees referee a game? Surely, no matter where it is, if it's inside the box or outside the box, if it's a decision that should be given, it needs to be given. It just, to me, just smacks of incompetence in the referees that we still have.
I do think that they view it differently. Now, I know they shouldn't, but if it's inside that penalty area, they will view it differently to outside the penalty area. And Jim, I think you'd agree with that. I think you said it earlier anyway. That's how it is. Whether it's just a psychological thing, a flaw in their human nature, referees, I don't know. But, if it's outside, it's given. If it's inside, it's not. It's bonkers, isn't it, really? Bizarre.
Well, it's obviously a bigger decision when it's in the box. But now you've got VAR, they shouldn't have to worry too much about it.
I know.
Because if they make an absolute cock-up of it, VAR will sort it out.
But it won't, though, will it? This is the problem. And I think we've got more debating points now. We've got VAR than before we had VAR.
Yeah,
if VAR can go and do one, as far as I'm concerned, I hate it. Can't stand it.
But it's not VAR, though.
It's a game this afternoon, Newcastle Villa. Villa score a goal. He looks offside to me, but the player on the far side looks as if he was playing him on. They spent ages on it. Of course, they spent ages on it. In the end, it was offside. But they shouldn't have to wait that long to know whether they've scored a goal or not. It's just wrong. It's crazy. It's taking the spontaneity out of the game. I hate it. We could have an whole show on this. I suppose we could, for sure. Back to you, boss.
Tim.
Yeah, but, getting back to VAR, I still say VAR's brilliant. There's nothing wrong with VAR. It's just the same incompetent referees that can't make the right decision that are making the decisions for VAR. So it's not the technology. Again, it's the people that are in charge of it that are causing the problems. And they're the same people that a few years ago were on the pitch making the same bad decisions that they're making in a room somewhere else now.
There's going to be quirks in football. A centre-back can run a ball out of play for a goal kick and literally be in front and just not even jockey him, but force an opponent literally away from the ball by pushing them, so the ball goes out, so they get the goal kick. But outside the penalty area, that's a free kick for obstruction.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a mockery. Football needs a huge overhaul of its rules, because stuff like that, a giant back and a small centre forward, there's only ever one winner there, and generally what happens is the centre forward will then just sling himself into a tackle. The big strapping centre back goes down like he's been shot, and there's a because he's trying to get to the ball. He's being deliberately forced off of the pitch away from the ball on a line that he tries to take. It is very, very strange. But Matty Cannon says robot referees on its way in 2025 season. Just a thought. But yeah. And anyway,
Joe, can I just come in?
Just quickly, yeah.
I like what Tony Quinn says. He says, time to bring the best refs from Europe into the Premier League. We've got the best players in the Premier League, probably, because that's where the money is. So if the money's there to pay the players, the money should be there to pay the very best referees. And we should pay them on performance as well. They should get rated. And the other thing about referees is they should face the cameras afterwards. Kevin Friend, I'm sorry, I'll come back to that game against Liverpool. He should have been made to face the cameras and explain himself as to why he gave that penalty, which was clearly not a penalty. Similarly, Simon Hooper could have been interviewed after the game yesterday. There it is. There's the still of it. Why didn't you give that as a penalty? And I think that will make them think it through a little bit more.
But if you do that to referees, then you're going to need to do it for players. Like performance-related pay. We've all been saying that for years. If you have a stinker, I've had a stinker tiling, and it's crap. I don't get paid, But some of these players can. The best one ever was what's his face at Chelsea. Sat on his backside for the last 2 years and got paid 40-50 grand a week. So anyway, we can go on about VAR and referees and performances. But I agree. Just, you know what? I just remembered one more thing, Ian. So I don't know whether teams do this now. I don't know whether a team has to give a referee a mark, because I know there's a referee's assessor. Jim, I don't know, but when I used to go and watch Craig Wanderers all the time, you had to give the referee a mark out of 10. And if you gave them lower than a 5, you had to write an explanation. And if they were that bad, you had to write an explanation why they were that bad. If you gave them a mark over 8, you had to write an explanation as to why they were that good. So what they used to do with the really crap referees in the Kent League, I used to give them 8s and 9s in the first division of the Kent League. So what he did, he got the referees, got them out of their league. They were like, "He's far too good for this pile of old crap." They just got them out of the league, and there were some terrible referees. But anyway, this move on. I would like to, by the way, in the close season, to do a show on referees and performance related pay and getting and making people answerable. But once you stick referees in front of a camera, I think they go like, they melt faster than a Mars bar in a microwave. Anyway, the next games we've got, fellas. Chelsea at home, Roy Hodgson away, Burnley at home, Stoke at home. So 2 home games in the league, a home game in the FA Cup. Jim, Chelsea at home. How do you think we're going to get on against them?
Is that debut, Jim? That debut?
Could I say a draw?
I'll take a draw. Respect the point.
I think when you come up against the sort of top 4 or 5 teams, like you would settle for a draw. Games like the Norwich and Brentford, because of the way we've been playing and gone about things this season, I think we're all thinking we should go and win them games. And in theory, we should do. But you mentioned earlier on, it's like Premier League, these teams are fighting for their lives. Brentford are fighting. They've just come up, so they don't want to go back down again. Norwich have gone through a terrible time. So it's I would say, yeah, a draw would be a good result. Yes, and I did score against them in my debut.
Brilliant. And when you went into that game, obviously you could talk all day about that day, but Palace, no one gave Palace a chance against Chelsea that day, did they?
No, well, from what I understand, we'd been in the old First Division. That was our 4th season, and we'd never beaten a London club in the 4 seasons. So that was the first time. So yeah, and that was quite nice, and it was nice because it was on the telly. It's pot luck in them days. There was only 3 games ever shown on the telly. So yeah.
And you scored on your debut. We missed a trick there. We should have had a picture of you there doing that. And then there was another game more recently against Chelsea where nobody gave us a chance. Take your mind back 4 seasons. Frank de Boer, 4 defeats. Roy comes in, 3 more defeats, 7 defeats on the spin. We're rock bottom. Not only have we haven't got a point, we haven't scored a goal. I don't think we hadn't scored a goal, have we? I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that.
John Terry scored that one.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, that wasn't that. We beat them 2-1. Wilf scored.
Right.
Yeah, and I can't remember who else scored. Real
Benteke.
Who did?
Benteke.
Anyway, we won 2-1. We hadn't got a point in the first 7 games. No one gave us a prayer. So I think it'll be typically Palace on the back of these 2 away draws when we fancy ourselves to win. We come and play Chelsea at home and beat them. And I think it's a good time to play Chelsea. Why? They've just come back from this World Club competition. They're World Club champions. I think it's a good time to play them. Yeah,
I was just about to say that. You can't play Chelsea at a better time. They've been travelling all the way around the world. They haven't played the league game for a couple of weeks. And if we're going to get a result off them, this is probably the best chance that we've got this season, definitely.
Yeah, so we'll go for a Palace win against Chelsea.
Okay. And it was Benteke and Wilf at Stamford Bridge when we won, didn't we? So we've obviously got Chelsea at home and then Watford away. That's going to be a difficult game for us, especially, Roy playing 9 at the back and trying to hit us on the break. So, and then again, Burnley at home. We know Burnley. Burnley will just do. Burnley will be Burnley. The only good thing about it is they won't come down to our ground and take the piss like they did last year. Hopefully, we'll be more up for a passing game and get the ball off them and not let them attack us like we did. And then again, like I just said, Stoke City. I know the graphic was just up, Nigel, just a minute ago, but Stoke City in the FA Cup. I mean, to be honest with you, that has to be winnable for us. And then we go into the 6 rounds. It's a possible chance of a Wembley appearance before the final anyway. But yeah, I think we've got some. I think it's a difficult time. I think, like I say, I think Watford will make things harder for us. Jim, I've got a question before we get close to wrapping this up. I've got a question for you. So, working with a fella the other day, he's a Fulham fan, about the same age as me, and I told him what I did, and I said you were part of our team now with the show and everything, and he said, ask him this question: does he remember playing Fulham and the referee blowing up so early that someone realised what he'd done, and after the crowd had gone home, but they had to bring the players back out to finish the game?
Yeah, I remember that. It was only like about 3 or 4 minutes. There weren't that much extra time in them days, but we come into the dressing room. But the funny thing which a lot of the players will remember, is we had a player called Nicky Chatterton, and the minute the whistle went, by the time the last player got into the dressing room, he was showered and dressed. So we've come off the park, some of us a bit later than others, got in there, Nicky showered, sitting there, putting his clothes on. The referees come in and said, sorry, lads, I've blown up 2 minutes early, we need to go back out. So he's had to get all his clothes back off, get his kit back on and go back out. Yes, I remember that. I can't remember the result, though, so...
Straight, he didn't remember the result. That was what I was going to ask you next. But yeah, really strange. It was.
Somebody said it was November 1978. There you go.
Was
Nigel
it?
says November
Really?
78.
We must have won then, because that was the year we got promoted, I think. So
There we go. Let's talk a little bit about the FA Cup, Joe, if we can we? I'm really excited. I'm really excited for the FA Cup. Nigel put a graphic up and it said live on BBC iPlayer. Ignore that, guys. All right, pretend it's not on the telly. Get yourself to Selhurst. It's only going to be 20 quid a ticket. I hope they keep the pricing the same as the Hartlepool game. Kids for a £5, even if it's a school night. We've got to do all we can to fill every seat inside Selhurst Park for that 5th round tie. And, Stoke won't fancy coming to us midweek. They're a championship side. We should beat them. And if we do that, we're in the quarterfinals. The only downside for me is that Newcastle then gets moved to midweek, which we could all do without a midweek trip to Newcastle. But I'm really excited for the FA Cup. This could be our year, guys. All right. That Patrick Vieira song, if you were at Brentford yesterday, you know what I mean about the Pat Vieira song. It's in my head still, Can't stop singing it in my head. I'm not going to sing it for you live on air, guys, but it's brilliant, I tell you.
Back to that game again. Paul Bristow just said, I was on the ground staff that day. The referee went to restart and then realised that the corner flags had been removed. Yeah, I love, little bits and pieces like that. I'm sure we can have a few questions in about strange stuff that's happened. And then Mark Callaghan said at least Clattenburg won't be ref for this Stoke game. So just a few, a bit of chat. Tell us what you think in the chat where we're going to get. So we've got Chelsea, Owen Watford away, Burnley out of that 9 points. How many points we get, and will we beat Stoke? Ian, those 3 games, and will we beat Stoke?
Okay, how many points are we going to get in those 3 games? I am going 7 points. And yes, we'll beat Stoke and we'll be in the 6th round of the FA Cup. There you go.
Tim?
Yeah, I'm going to go 7 as well. And also a victory in the cup.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, I would like to think that we can get 7 points. I don't see any reason why not. And I can see us getting in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. I mean, crowd-wise, we put a sellout against Hartlepool, so I can't see why a 5th round of the FA Cup at home won't be a sellout as well.
The only thing about it is that it's going to be a bit weird, isn't it? Because it's midweek. I'm disappointed it's midweek. It's the first time it's ever happened. I know we've all been to replays midweek, but I think that could be the thing that puts some people off, especially kids. Because one thing great about that Hartlepool game, there were so many families there. A few people I knew said they took their kids for the first time, which is lovely, and they can afford to do it at those prices. But I can't see them doing it on a school night, on the 1st of March. But who knows? Let's hope they do.
Well, Stephen says 6 points. Greg Ellis says 4. Rob Cranfield 3. We'll lose 1. Tom says 7. Paul says 4. Matty Cam says 3 points. All draws. Greg says we will also beat Stoke. Daniel Garlick says 6 points and 3-1 against Stoke. Ian Appley said 7 and beats 6 points. Yes. Will beat Stoke. So everyone thinks that we are going to batter Stoke, Tony Quinn. So Jason 6, Luke 5 points. So yeah, Ryan Hinton 7 and a Stoke win. I think it means us. Yeah. And Paul Bristow says Johnny Plummer was my best mate back then. He was Len's assistant. I know John and Tina Plummer, his sister. I used to live about 50 yards away from them. They come from the new estate in New Adderton. So yeah, I knew I grew up with the Plumbers, Paul. And just quickly, just before we go, Tom Clark saying we said 2-2, 1-2, 1-0, 2-0. So yeah, Lee Lockwood said anything like 2 points and we're in the smelly stuff. No, we'll draw 2 and 1 win. Paul Glance says 9. Oh, here we go. Where's he gone? 9 points. I've just lost it. He's just gone. Where's Paul Glance?
9 points
and the quarterfinals, and we will beat Chelsea. Yeah, we will beat Chelsea. So yeah, I think we'd all take that. Gents, we're on the hour. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your time in the for taking time in the chat to join us and for all your comments. I think Nick will be back after his family shenanigans of today. I can't remember if it was a birthday or an anniversary to someone to his mother-in-law. I hope they've had a lovely time. I had a rubbish time detecting today up in Oxford. Got soaking wet. Found a few things, but all was not lost apart from someone else's stuff. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon. Good night.
Cheers, guys.
Not all.
Good night.